From one country beginning with the letter M to another, although this one is situated deep in the northern tropic. Round 7 of the 2014 FF1M Championship comes to you from Mexico City, located in Mexico. I'm quite excited about this one, hence why I'm on my own this time. And this is actually the first race held at Mexico since Season 5 of the Masters era. There's only been 2 races held at the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, and there was Season 4 and 5, won by Alan Prost for Maestro Motorsport and John Alesi in the FJR. But this is the first held under the management era. So last time it was the tight and twisty streets of Monaco, which saw Fernando Alonso pretty much dominate the entire race, save for Sebastian Vettel briefly getting in his way before the German's first stop, and that puts Willows and Alonso back on track, although it is still Shake and Bake who lead the Constructors' Championship by 6 points, partly thanks to Nico Rosberg crashing out at the chicane. Here's a look at the circuit. Only 2 slow sections here. Got the 1-2-3 chicane, the right, left, right, and then a quick left of 4 by a tight right at 5, and then a tight section of 6, but from then it just gets quicker and quicker, right up until turn 1 again. One of my favourite layouts, this. I just love it when it gets quicker and quicker. Shame that it got absolutely molested by Tilke. So first practice saw Lewis Hamilton top the timesheets. Very quick, 1 minute 7.945. Nearly 4/10 quicker than Thomas Gonzalez in the Tornado, and Kobayashi up in third as well. So both Gujeras showing strongly, and that form continued going into practice 2. Hamilton topping it once again on a 1:7.309. Half a second quicker than Fernando Alonso, the driver who won at Monaco. No Jenson Button in the first 2 practices. He took part in both practices in Monaco, and Kevin Magnussen gets the nod for this occasion. So Hamilton is on pole for the 3rd time this season, but an absolutely astonishing performance from Horizon sees Adrian Sutil on the front row and Paul Di Resta up in 5th. Great performance from the Irish team. Sandwiching the two are Sebastian Vettel, championship leader, and Alonso, Monaco winner. Bottas will start 6th for GRM, and Jean-Eric Vergne, who finished 3rd last time out at Monaco after a strong performance in the Tornado, will start 7th this time around. And Kevin Magnussen starts 8th, so he's getting some good use out of his practice time. Completing the top 10 are Raikkonen and Grosjean. And Nico Rosberg not doing so well at the moment. He's retired from the last couple of races, and he'll start this one from 11th, ahead of Sergio Perez in the other Exolite. And there's a name that's new for this season, Karun Chandhok, returning to Pedersen effectively after his stint in 2010, after Maldonado disappointed the Danish boss. A bit of a disappointment for Andrew F1. They've not been performing so well either. They occupy row 10, but looking last, Daniel Ricciardo, he's not doing so well, and that will come as a huge shock to himself and the Shake and Bake team. So let's see how he does in the race, in which we see the red light come on, and a bit of a pause before. The green light goes on, and it is go for Mexico. It looked like a good start from Adrian Sutil, who's got up alongside Lewis Hamilton just about as they cross underneath the Marlborough Bridge. It's a long run to the first corner, and it looks as if Bottas and Alonso are making some strides going to the first corner. But Sutil's been tagged, and he's off on the grass, and that's undone all his hard work, and he's tagged his teammate Paul Di Resta, who similarly not had a good start. So that's compromised Horizon's race somewhat, but it is Hamilton who leads from Fernando Alonso and Jean-Eric Vergne, who's had a great start to move on to 3rd position, and Valtteri Bottas up to 4th from 6th on the grid. Not such a good start for Sebastian Vettel, who drops from 3rd to 5th. Grosjean has had a great start. He's gone up to 6th position from 10th on the grid, obviously utilising the long run down into turn 1. And after starting 2nd on the grid, it's Adrian Sutil who sits 7th, 1 place ahead of Kevin Magnussen, who holds station in the FJR. But rounding the last of the S's into the famous Peraltada, it's Bottas who's going to have a look at Vergne going into the long 180-degree right-hand corner. Vergne braving it out round the outside and holding on to 3rd at the moment, but it is Lewis Hamilton who leads from Alonso. Both drivers on the hard tyres, it seems. Vergne on the mediums, and there's Vettel versus Bottas now for 4th position, and it's advantage Shake and Bake and both are on the softs this time around. So we've got an absolute mix of tyres at the moment, and we're expecting 2 stops all round in this 68 lap race at Mexico. So let's see what else has happened. Magnussen's just moved up to 7th ahead of Suttel, and he has now got Kimi Räikkönen all over his gearbox. And now let's see further back. Ricciardo has gained a position at the expense of Jaime Alguersuari. We've seen Pastor Maldonado get dropped this season, relegated to testing duties for the Pedersen team. Maybe Mitchell could be thinking of something similar. Rounding the last of the S's now, there's Lewis Hamilton, who's opening up a bit of a gap over Fernando Alonso. And Hamilton will be looking to bounce back after a relatively disappointing Monaco, where had a difficult qualifying and then stuck amongst the traffic and unable to advance much. He finished down in 8th, and that strengthened Sebastian Vettel's lead in the championship. He now sits 10 points ahead of the Brit in what has been a very good season for himself and Shake and Bake so far. And here we have a look at a replay. This is on board with Adrian Suttel, who got the best start out of the front row crew. Former best mates, these. Everyone seems to be former best mates with Hamilton, but anyway, let's see. Going to get nerfed up the back by Bottas, and onto the marbles and onto the grass, and then tagging his teammate De Resta, compromising the Scot in the process. Here we have a look at a view from back of Suttel. Briefly took the lead, but only thanks to the nerf from Bottas, and there's the touch with De Resta, and that was where Magnussen got through as well. So rounding the S's, and Alonso's catching up to Hamilton, who is not on the hards, he's on the mediums, my mistake there. And just behind we've got Vettel looking to advance at the expense of Verne. He's getting quite close to the Tornado driver. Underneath the Campari bridge into the Peraltada, there's the pits on the right. But we're going through the final corner for now because it is only lap 3, and we're expecting the first stops at around lap 20 through to 25. 4/10 is the buffer between Hamilton and Alonso. Now I seem to remember back when they raced in season 5 of the Masters era that I'm trying to remember who started pole. It might have been Michael Schumacher for Willow Images, as we have a look at an Andrew F1 being shunted off the road by Sainz, and spinning goes the pair of them. So Massa and Sainz getting into a bit of bother. Now who we're looking at here, Jenson Button, who's very, very wide. A Peraltada, big spin and big crash. He's lost his rear wing. The driver who finished second at Monaco. And oh my goodness me, that is Daniel Ricciardo, who has completely wiped out the Brit. Ricciardo was side by side with another driver and obviously wasn't aware that Jenson Button was stranded. So a frightening accident between 2 Yorkshire teams. And that's pretty much spelt the end of Ricciardo's very wretched weekend. Now here we have a look at Robert Kubica and Sebastian Buemi. And still side by side through the S's, the first S's. And round the outside of 2 goes Kubica at the expense of Buemi. So that's a good, impressive move. Oh, Buemi's pulling off. Buemi's pulling off. So that's a mechanical issue for the Tornado driver. Yet to score a point this season is Buemi, and this race will prolong the agony for him. You can see in the background we've got the recovering Massa and Sainz. Let's see what the prognosis is on this Tornado this time around. Had a mechanical issue at the Nürburgring, and it's a suspension problem, so a bumpy track proving too much for the Tornado suspension on this occasion. Although Verne's still sitting up in 3rd, so it's not going too badly. What we're looking at here, Rosberg versus Magnussen going into the Peraltada, and side by side, and that is 7th position for the Willows Racing driver. Although Magnussen is in the slipstream, so is he going to do something about the German? He is. He's on the mediums at the moment, is Magnussen. Nicely matching the yellow lines on the FJR. But that's 7th position back for Magnussen. Now, is Kev going to do something about Roman? I doubt it, because the Pedersen looks quite good. Although not in the hands of Chandok, as he's being pressured by Sergio Perez at the Peraltada. And that is a position gained for the Mexican, who had a gearbox failure at Monaco. There's a long, long straight. And it seems to be helping Karun Chandhok because he's side by side once again with the Excellite driver, and that is the position regained for Chandhok. There's a bit of a pattern emerging already as we're on lap 9. I think Rosberg has officially taken the position away from Magnussen. He's in front of him, and now he's going to have a look at Roman Grosjean going into 4. No, he's not. Oh, my goodness, that is a suspension failure for Nico Rosberg of sorts. And that is another retirement for the Germans. So ever since his win in Malaysia and a few more good results since then, it hasn't worked out for Rosberg. 3 retirements in a row. So the suspension's taking a bit of a pounding at the moment as the marshal pushes back the Willows driver. And Chandhok having another good little battle with Perez going into the first corner. This will be the battle for 13th, 12th position now with the retirement of Rosberg. And that moves Magnussen back up to 7th and then Suttil up into 8th. Although the Horizon team would have been hoping for a bit more after qualifying on the front row and in 5th. But Bottas saw to that. Now then into the Peraltada once again we go. Here is Perez versus Chandhok. Side by side, and Chandhok braving it out round the outside, but still braving it out round the outside. It's a drag race as we go on to lap 11 for these two. Who is going to be bravest on the brakes going into the first corner? We'll find out shortly as we go underneath the bridge. Hard on the brakes, and it looks like Chandhok's braving it out round the outside. Is Perez going to do something about it? Yes, he is. He's going to move up into 2nd of the bottom 20. I had no idea what I was going to say then. Perez up to 12th. That's what I was meant to say. As we go around through the yeses, we're looking at Magnussen. And he's run a bit wide. Oh, bouncing over the curb. Just about hanging on to that one. But now he's going to come under pressure from Adrian Suttil for... This is the battle for 7th. And Suttil takes the position away from the Dane. Now is Kimi Raikkonen going to do something about Magnussen? Yes, he is, as he tries to outbrake the Dane going into turn 1. And that is 8th position for the Excellite driver. Excellite's working a little bit better at Mexico compared to Monaco. Really struggled back then. Now is Kimi going to do something about Suttil? We'll find out once we've had a look at what Roman Grosjean has been up to going into turn 4. That is way too late. Into the corner, nudging the concrete, and spinning to the other side of the circuit goes the Pedersen driver. So that is a bit of a clumsy mistake there from Grosjean. As Karun Chandhok is going to make a pit stop, his first of the season. So he's made it to his first pit stop window. That's nice to see. Currently in 12th position, but let's see how long this pit stop is. And there's a Mitchell making a pit stop as well. Mitchell's not looking quick once again, so I wonder what's happened to the team in terms of development, because I was expecting Hulkenberg to challenge for podiums. Hasn't worked quite as well as they'd hoped. 6.4 seconds is the stop for Chandhok, and it was Al Jaswari who made the pit stop for Mitchell. Now we have a look at Jean-Eric Vergne, who's going to be in the pits this lap. To the right, and to the inside lane, which marks the pit lane. And with Tornado finishing 3rd last race, they move up to 8th in the championship behind FJR, leapfrogging Mitchell and Andrew F1 in the process. And that'll please Tobias a little bit. And no doubt they'll be quite pleased with Jean-Eric Vergne's performance in this race, running 3rd before his first pit stop, and 5.2 seconds, that is quick. As he exits the pit lane in 11th position ahead of Kubica. And some nice clear track for the Frenchman to enjoy once everyone else makes their first pit stops. Grosjean comes into the pits, as does Sebastian Vettel. So it's the battle between the two Vs, Vergne versus Vettel, as Vettel comes into the 81 km/h speed line. Going to turn to the right. Into his pit box goes the championship leader. Another set of softs and 4.7 seconds. That is quicker than Vergne's by about half a second. Now, where is Vettel going to rejoin in relation to the Tornado driver? There is Verne, and Vettel has rejoined ahead, but Verne has the momentum, and he's going to retake that position away from Vettel going into the first corner. And the two do battle once again in this second stint. So briefly in 8th and 9th, but everyone has got first pit stops to make, so this will be the battle for 3rd position, depending on how quick or slowly these next pit stops go. We have a look at Hamilton, who's pretty much hit 1/3 distance, as has Fernando Alonso. So it's a pit stop race between Gajera and Willows. So overtaking not proving as difficult as I thought, because back in Season 5, when the Mexican Grand Prix was last held in the FF1M World, as Alonso getting a bit delayed by Bottas, who himself is coming into the pits, as is Suttil. It was Michael Schumacher who'd qualified on pole position for Willow Images, completely different team to Willows Racing, but Jean Alesi took the lead at the start and on a one-stop strategy held the lead for such a long time that it completely wrecked Schumacher's two-stop strategy, and that's pretty much helped him win. That was his second win for FJR back in the old Masters era. Alesi only had 3, and they came at the Season 4 Belgium and Season 7 Luxembourg, which was at the Nürburgring. Back to the action, there's big delay between Di Resta and I think that was Hamilton. It was indeed Hamilton. Di Resta briefly led the race before making a pit stop, and the delay is going to bring Alonso sort of back into contention. So that's some interesting stuff going on. I think Hamilton was trying to overtake Di Resta, but Di Resta was coming into the pits, and the Gajera driver didn't quite read that one. As we have a look at the battle between an Andrew F1 and Roman Grosjean, just about recognise that helmet. I think this is Kubica that we're looking at. And he's trying to get in the slipstream. There's another driver X in the pits and getting in between the two. So who is that? That looks like the other Gajera of Kobayashi. Indeed it is, as Kubica muscles his way up into 13th position. So it's not only the entry of the pits, but also the exits that's causing bother for these drivers. Chopping back onto the racing line, that's what Kobayashi was doing. Off the track goes Kubica, and spinning goes Kubica, and oh, Kevin Magnussen has crashed as well, so both FJRs out of the race, and it's a suspension failure for Magnussen. So once again, this bumpy track surface is punishing these drivers. So now this is the battle for 8th position between Perez and Di Resta, going into the Peraltada. As Di Resta going to try and hang on round the outside, he is trying to, but Perez takes the position. But now Di Resta is in the slipstream and will surely challenge going into turn 1 on, this is lap 30 of the race. Let's see what happens. Under the bridge, onto the brakes, Di Resta retakes the position away from Perez. But both Exolites challenging for points. That is more than could be said for Monaco, for the Yorkshire team. Now the two Pedersens go into combat with each other, although this time around it's Grosjean versus Chandok. This is the battle for 12th position. So how is Grosjean going to tackle the Indian driver? He had a podium in the 2010 Italian Grand Prix, did Chandok, in a race that saw one of the rarities of a red flag at the start, big pile-up, and Chandok, I can't remember where he started, but he powered his way into the lead, briefly, before it was red flagged. As Pedersen do battle going through 1, 2 and 3, it goes the advantage of Grosjean. Now we have a look at Nico Hülkenberg, who is staring at the back of Di Resta versus Perez. Now he's going to run a bit wide at turn 4 and spin pretty much at the exit of 5. So turn 4 catching quite a few drivers out. It's already caught Kubica out, it's caught Grosjean out, and it's seen the retirement of Rosberg. As we look at Grosjean going through the S's, running wide at one of the S's, and off the track, and back onto it goes Grosjean, and the curb nearly spat him into a spin, but hanging on to the Pedersen, although he's now becoming under pressure from Robert Kubica in the Andrew F1, going to the Peraltada, Side by side, fair racing between the two. Kubica takes a position, but now Grosjean is back in the slipstream. Now let's see, Mugen versus the it's the Megatron engined Andrew F1. And the Mugen's showing some good power as Grosjean retakes a position away from Kubica. Just behind Kubica is the other Andrew F1 of Felipe Massa. Meanwhile, we hit half distance as Kimi Raikkonen has an engine failure. That's an Ilmor gone in the back of the Exolite. And out of the race goes the current world champion. Now we have a look at Grosjean versus... is that Alguersuari going through the Peraltada? Well, it's definitely through the Peraltada, and I think it is Alguersuari, but I could be wrong on that one. I think both Hulkenberg and Alguersuari have yellow on their helmets. As they continue the battle going down the main straight, going into turns 1, 2 and 3, and the Mitchell retakes a position from Grosjean. Still side by side though, and this is going to bring Robert Kubica into play. Anyway, it was half distance a few laps ago, and it is still Lewis Hamilton leading by 2.5 seconds from Fernando Alonso. So Alonso holding station behind the Gajera driver, and it's still Jean-Eric Vergne who holds third ahead of Sebastian Vettel. Bottas sits fifth ahead of the two Horizons, Suttel and Di Resta. So they're showing that their qualifying pace has been translated into the race, because both drivers are in the points. Alguersuari running a bit wide at one of the corners of the S's. As it gets quicker, they do battle, and Kubica's powered his way past Alguersuari, and now he's going to have a look at Grosjean once again as they go into the Peraltada. This is for 12th position. This is where all the action has been so far in the midfield. As they go onto the front straight, it is now Alguersuari versus Kubica for 13th as we go down the big long straight. There's some grandstands on the right. Goodyear Bridge breaks, and then 13th position for Alguersuari. So another lap completed for the front two, and it is still 2.5 seconds the gap between Hamilton and Alonso. So Alonso's definitely getting his season back together after winning pretty much dominantly in Monaco. The gap was 8 seconds, but he had it under control in the end. But we've still got another sequence of pit stops to go, so it could all change depending on how much fuel that Hamilton and Alonso are carrying. Hamilton didn't take as much fuel on as others in his first pit stop, so we could be seeing him in first. We'll find out as we exit the S's. It's still this battle for 13th position between Alguersuari and Kubica. Felipe Massa is going to come into play shortly once these two run side by side. Still side by side as they go down the main straight. Massa's trying to get a bit of slipstream, but it's Kubica who has the advantage at the moment. This must surely be 13th place for the Andrew F1. As they hit the brakes, Alguersuari is braving it out round the outside of one. And is Kubica going to be equally brave? He is, as he takes 13th position away from the Mitchell driver. Now Massa is in with a shot of 14th position. And just behind them, there is Carlos Sainz, a driver who had a collision with Massa earlier on. Now, what's Valtteri Bottas been up to? He currently sits in 5th position. This is through turn 6 and then the start of the S's. A little bit wide at 7, but we are deep into the S's now. He's gone a bit wide there. Slowly onto the grass and rejoining and spinning as he hits the curb quite heavily. Where is Suttil? There is Suttil. As Bottas does a neat little 180 to rejoin, having lost 5th position to the Horizon driver. And it's Pedersen's providing the next bit of action once again as Grosjean... Oh, Chandok went a bit too wide there. Braving it out around the outside, hitting the curb, and now he's going to come under pressure from Kubica as we go down the main straight. Kubica taking a bit more slipstream. And is he going to try and outbrake the Indian driver going into the first sequence of corners? Yes, he is. That is a position gain from Kubica. So Chandok losing 2 positions effectively. Now, as we get closer to the second sequence of pit stops, Alonso's just bringing the gap down a little bit. It's now 1.6 seconds, and Hamilton is due in the pits this lap. In fact, Sergio Perez is the first one to blink out of the top 8. That position would have been taken by Hülkenberg, but Hülkenberg also in the pits. Now, what is Hamilton doing here on the outside? And then chopping to the inside. That's strange driving. But Alonso in the pits as well. So they were both going to the same lap as each other. So it's yet another pit stop race, but it does favour Hamilton, because he gets to pit first. The Willows pit box is a bit further down, so they need to perform a very quick stop for Hamilton. 5.2 seconds, that's pretty good. And there he goes past the Willows driver. So once again, I'm trying to look for the right phrase there. Normal service resumed between the top two as Jean-Eric Vergne comes into the pits. Vettel briefly takes the lead, but he has a second stop to make. And he's due in the pits on the end of lap 47. So he's going to dive right into the underneath lane as Felipe Massa comes into the pits as well. But we concentrate on Sebastian Vettel for the moment, slowing down to 81 kilometres an hour. Feels like deja vu. I think we covered this in the first round of pit stops with Sebastian Vettel on board. Another set of softs go on the shake and bake. Slower stop compared to the first one this time, 6.2. Now this is important in his battle for third position with Jean-Eric Vergne. Was that Vergne that had just gone past? It was indeed, so Vergne holds on to third for the moment, but Vettel now has the advantage on tyres. Grosjean out of the race, so is that a technical problem? Yes it is. Somewhere in the transmission has gone a bit wonky. So he provided quite a bit of entertainment for the Mexican Grand Prix, battling with loads of drivers, but it's gone a bit wrong for the Pedersen. As we have a look at Sergio Perez, currently sits in 8th position. He's the only Exolite still running because Raikkonen had an incident and retired, and now Perez is doing a wall of death on the gravel trap. Now, can he still rejoin in 8th position? He's bouncing a bit. He's nestled himself into the barriers, and that is out of the points for Perez. Now, as we look at, and he's going to rejoin right into the path of Jean-Eric Vergne. So where is Sebastian Vettel now? There is Vettel. He's not close enough to Vergne, but that has brought him right into play in the battle for third position, as now he puts a lap on Perez. He's now braking hard into the first corner. Vergne going slightly defensive for some reason, and now Vettel is right in with a chance now. Is he going to do something about it? He won't do it in this sector. He'll have to wait until the Peraltada. We've seen quite a few overtakes going into the long, fast, pretty much flat out 180 degree corner that leads back onto the main straight. Another opportunity to overtake. So rounding the short corner of the S's before 3 more. That was Grosjean on the side, and that was Raikkonen also on the side of the road. So there's very little room for recovery thanks to the concrete walls. Now Vettel up the inside now, side by side, Vergne braving it out round the outside and just about hanging on to third position for now. He's got another 18 laps of this, so he'll do well to hang on to third position, but he'll give it a good go, I am sure of that. Now Vettel better watch out because Perez is still quite close, though he shouldn't really be. As we have a look at Jaime Alguersuari going through the S's, running a bit wide on the penultimate one, and spinning. Has that damaged the rear wing? It's lost a wheel, so that is Jaime Alguersuari out of the race, rejoining right in the middle of the circuit, so that's precarious. As we go back to the action between Vergne and Vettel, Vettel not quite as close going into the Peraltada, but he's in the slipstream down the main straight. How much of a slipstream has he got? And how different is the power between Megatron and Climax? Well, look at that, Vergne hanging on. And Vettel couldn't do anything about it in the end, so he's going to have to find something a bit special if he's going to take third position and strengthen his championship lead, because at the moment Hamilton is leading. Oh, bang goes Bottas! That is a Mugen on fire. So the Mexican circuit really, really punishing the cars. We've seen loads of reliability issues. And that is GRM's 100% race reliability gone. They'd finished every race up to this point with both drivers. but the Mexican altitude proving too much. Now Vettel is alongside Verne, and there's yellow flags, but that doesn't really matter in this championship. 3rd place for Vettel. So he's moved up into the podium place and limiting the damage fairly well, because Hamilton and Alonso have been in a different league compared to the entire field. So through 4 and 5, and Vettel starting to pull away now. No doubt 3rd is the best that he can hope for now, as he goes into the S's. Just looking back, here is Suttle. I was just about to say Suttle's running in 5th position. Di Resta 6th, Hulkenberg 7th, and Kobayashi 8th. As we go through the Peraltada, that is a wide entry for Suttle, onto the grass and the gravel, and just about getting away without any damage, but how many positions is Suttle going to lose? Has he beached it? Or is he just waiting for Suttle? Oh, the car turning right, even though it's full lock to the left. That is bizarre. But rejoining in 6th. No damage done to Horizon, interestingly enough. But here comes Hulkenberg now. He's going to take 6th position going down the main straight. So ultimately, Suttle drops from 5th to 7th. Now then, this is the final lap, as Lewis Hamilton has controlled it from Alonso. Now he's going to go through the Peraltada. No such problems for the Gajera driver, as he exits the Peraltada and takes the victory. That is his 2nd of the season. Only Gajera's 2nd of the season. That's the first since Australia. In what was a very quick race. 1 hour and 18 minutes, 14 seconds. Very fast. Alonso comes home in 2nd, and it will be Sebastian Vettel who comes home in 3rd position. Unless Verne has done something stupendous. We'll find out shortly as Hamilton takes the plaudits. There's Alonso taking his 2nd podium in a row. And Hulkenberg in 6th position. Is he going to be in 6th position? Because that is a very wide at Peraltada and grazing the tyre barrier with his rear wing. So Suttle retakes 6th. Hulkenberg dropping to 7th. He was guaranteed a 7th position anyway because he was the last driver on the lead lap. But it's Lewis Hamilton who won the race, having set the fastest lap as well, so he's done the Grand Slam, like Alonso did in Monaco. Alonso takes 2nd ahead of Sebastian Vettel, top 3 all on different tyres, so they're proving more equal than expected. Jean-Eric Verne takes 4th for Tornado, so continuing the renaissance, and both Horizons in the points, Di Resta ahead of Suttle. Good result for Di Resta, that. Hulkenberg 7th, and Kobayashi makes it 2 Gajeras in the top 8. Albeit a lap down from his teammates, so he's going to have to step up a little bit. Kubica 9th, and Chandok finishes his first race of the season in 10th. And a long list of retirements, 3 of which had accidents. There was Alguersuari, Button and Ricciardo, who both of those 2 had a horrifying collision at Peraltada. The rest all mechanical, and they include Bottas, Grosjean, Raikkonen, Magnussen, Rosberg and Buemi. 3 suspension failures, so the bumps causing some punishment. And there's confirmation of Lewis Hamilton setting the fastest lap, a 1:07.970. Pretty much had the weekend sewn up from first practice, so a well-deserved win for Gajera. So what does this do to the championship now? We have got Sebastian Vettel, who will still lead the championship, but the gap now vastly reduced to 4 points from Hamilton. Rosberg still sits in 3rd position, amazingly enough, despite 3 retirements in a row, but now Fernando Alonso has come into play. 23 points, 32 behind Vettel, but now he's got his season kick-started, and he's moved ahead of Bottas as well. Grosjean sits 6th now. Jean-Eric Verne moves up into 7th after a strong run of results, ahead of Sergio Perez and Kimi Raikkonen. Shake and Bake still lead the constructors, now from Willows, but it's now 4 points, the gap, and Gajera also closing up on the Yorkshire team, 7 points behind Shake and Bake. Exolite still sit 4th in the Constructors' Championship ahead of GRM, Pedersen's 6th. Tornado now move ahead of FJR thanks to Team Verne, and Horizon move up to 9th thanks to their very strong result. So that was the Mexican Grand Prix, the first of 3 races in the North American continent. We will be returning to Road America next for the United States Grand Prix. So we shall see you for then.